record. All right. Okay. So welcome everybody to another edition to FYLPRO Fridays. And my special guest today is Ryan Letada. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, what's up? It's Good Friday, so it's gonna be a great conversation. Good conversation.
I know we're totally getting ready for Easter Sunday, but I wanted to ask you first of all, what has been your experience with FYLPRO? We're celebrating 10 years since its launch, so I wanted to see your experience and what you've been doing since.
Yeah, FYLPRO is a tribe, and so for me, here's a perfect example. 6 FYLPRO folks went to my wedding.
Wow.
The officiant at my wedding was Mike the Healig out of Kauai.
We know Mike. We know Mike.
Yep, and he's an incredible wedding officiant if you ever need one. And then, yeah, we hosted our wedding was in Kauai, and all FYLPRO fam from across the country came through. So that's what FYLPRO meant to me. It's beyond the impact. It's really about like chosen family.
Yeah. And, I think for you and the work that you've been doing in sharing Filipino stories and making it just an empowerment, an issue of empowerment. Tell us how, you've taken that experience and really transferred it to what you're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah. So I am so privileged to do my Next Day Better work every single day. Right. And the purpose behind the work that we do is to end invisibility. And so it's not just invisibility, but in the sense of invisibility in a migrant and multicultural world, looking at invisibility of immigrants like me, Filipino, who arrived in the United States or wherever you are from around the world. So for example, the work that we do, it was really inspired because of my own mom, right? She's been a nurse in this country for over 30 years, and she has saved thousands, countless of lives in her career in the surgical ICU unit. And when I saw, in a supermarket that someone, said something very racist and painful to my mother, I was like, whoa, you do not understand the depth of contribution and sacrifice that she's made for my family, but also for her community in the Bronx. And so she was invisible. And so that's kind of the impetus of Next Day Better and how we started is like, let's end invisibility through stories. Let's end invisibility in data. Let's end invisibility in workplaces and push it forward in that way.
And I know you have a background in entrepreneurship and the technical field, technology, and that's why you built that platform. For those of us who may not have known about Next Day Better until recently, I know you've had to pivot also, right? Like you had this platform, an innovative platform for telling these stories, but now you've also chosen to pivot to a different type of thing. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Next Day Better started off as a passion project. I was a young 20-year-old in 2012, whatever, that's just like, all right, let's create and change the world. And so it started off with doing events featuring Filipino and immigrant stories around the world. And lo and behold, sponsors and brands were not paying us a lot, and it was not sustainable, right? And so one of my biggest lessons learned there is you cannot put yourself on fire to keep other people warm. And so we needed to take a look at our business model. And so today we've actually shifted. We are focused again on ending invisibility in migrant communities around the world. And now we have an agency that partners with brands like MailChimp, AARP, Doctors Without Borders, Pinterest, helping them engage immigrant and migrants around the world. We have a data company focused on harnessing diaspora data for impact in business. And then we have a media company as well, where we tell stories that move culture and shift narratives around what it means to be an immigrant. So that's paying the lights and helping work towards this my goal of generational wealth and generational healing. So yeah.
Yeah. And as you know, being in the tech field, it's not easy to get the funding to do these passion projects, especially if the world isn't ready for our stories, right? You'd think by now, we could, especially with how many Filipinos, what are we, like the third largest uh,
Yes.
immigrant population in the US? Is that the statistics right now?
Well, the third largest Asian American group in the United States. Yeah.
And with that, we can't even really break into the mainstream and see our faces. I mean, it's improved, since I was a kid, right? At least we're talking about it now, but at the same time, it's not quite at the level that I think we should be. And you learned this, right? As a techpreneur, a media entrepreneur, that people aren't ready to pay for
Yeah.
our stories.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things, we need to take a look at. It's like, yes, we made incremental steps forward, but we need a moonshot. We need to leapfrog in terms of getting our stories out there, right? And so in terms of entrepreneurship and Filipino entrepreneurs in particular, we don't have access to capital in the way that that is truly needed, that is more present in other AAPI groups or other communities as well, right? So we're looking at where are the angel investors, the venture capitalists who are looking for Filipino talent and investing in that particular talent. We need more of that, right? We can look towards Chinese and Vietnamese and Thai communities where they have chamber of commerces or business associations where they are funding each other's businesses and scaling across the country. Like, what does that look like for our community? So there's a real need there to actually also, this is something that I think about as well, is if we are asking for money and for funding because we are valuable, we have to support our Filipino entrepreneurs because they're valuable as well. And what I mean by that is that, y'all, we can't ask for free stuff anymore or discounts to pay at a restaurant. It is difficult to be a small business owner. And so we need to vote with our dollars, right? And pay for our businesses. And we found that in the beginning, when we were, doing events, people were hesitant to pay $10 just to attend a powerful event that gave them free food, inspiration from the top Filipino minds around the world. And that's a challenge. Why is that? If you're willing to pay $50 or $100 or whatever to a particular event, why not ours? And so we need to really
think about that. I was going to ask you, $10. That's like Starbucks or something.
Yeah, or in New York City, I'm like, it's just not worth a drink to you, and we're actually giving you a lot of open bars sometimes. So that's at the beginning, and we need to really interrogate that ourselves and vote with our dollars.
Yeah, I think aside from getting people to acknowledge the importance and value of our stories and our experiences, what are some other challenges that you found in, obviously your entrepreneur journey and, trying to uplift the rest of us out here, trying to make it, trying to follow our dreams and passions and our advocacies?
Right. And so, yes, support each other's small businesses, invest in Filipino immigrant entrepreneurs, et cetera. But I think another thing that we have to take a look at, and this is a side project outside of NextDayBetter that I'm doing, because at NextDayBetter, again, we're focused on ending invisibility in a migrant and multicultural world, right? So we're looking at other immigrant populations as well. But one of the side projects that I'm doing is actually understanding, in the midst of Stop Asian Hate and the new modern Asian American civil rights movement, the capital flows that are coming into our community, right? When we take a look at 2021 alone, let me pull up some statistics here. In 2021, FedEx gave philanthropic giving was 2.5 million to Asian Americans. New York State governor gave 10 million towards AAPI. The Asian American Foundation in 2021 raised $1.1 billion. The Asian American community is experiencing a significant amount in increase in philanthropic giving, in state funding, federal funding, and private funding. And so if you take a look at that with all that money, the question is, how is it going equitably? How is it being distributed equitably across all AAPI communities, right? And so I'm Filipino, so of course I'm going to take a look at Filipinos as well. I'm taking a look at other groups. But with the Filipino community, and we did a small initial pilot study of 100 organizations. And we found that out of that 100, only 3 had an operating budget over $1 million. Out of 100. Again, this is an incomplete study, right? We need to continue doing these studies, right? And so we're looking at 501c3 organizations. And so if that is the case, and we are the 3rd largest Asian American group in the United States, with a history being the first Asian American to land on this continental America, why is it that we don't have organizations that are funded to end disparities in our community or to address the needs of our community? There's a disparity there.
Yeah, that's such an important point because, like you said, there's so much effort to put money into the community, right? But how much do we know is actually coming into Filipinos, that Filipino community?
Mm-hmm.
And there's,
and so it's the part of the pilot project. We're working with data scientists and professors to actually follow the flow of money and capital, and to just really understand, well, what does this look like, and back it up with data. Our goal here is not to say they have more or other groups have more. Our goal is to really say, here's what this looks like. Here's how you meet Filipino community members where they are at. Here's what the disparities in funding look like. Because through data, we can make more really smart investment and appeal for dollars to go to our communities. And so that's a really critical part.
Such an important study. And I think it would, obviously, when it comes to public policy or changes, they always want that data, right? It's nice to hear anecdotes or things like that. But in the end, if you don't have that concrete, those metrics, then no one's going to believe you, right? So
for us, it's like, it's when we talk about end invisibility, I mean, there's aspects of that in media, but we have to think about end invisibility in data as well, right? We're so lumped into this Asian American group, but when you disaggregate the data and look at Cambodians versus Hmong versus Chinese, Taiwanese, et cetera, we could really look at like, wow, what does this look like? And how do we address it? And so that's the whole goal.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. So what's your timeline on something like that? So I know you said it's one of your side projects of many. So are you working on it now? You're hoping to get funding for it?
Yeah, well, so, as part of the project, I put my own funds towards this, right? So that's how I contribute, like, specifically to the Filipino community. But this is going to get fully funded so we could do the full research. And so definitely looking for individuals that are willing to contribute to push this forward. Because something that I don't do is ask for volunteer support. Like not in terms of, I think it's great to volunteer. What I mean by that is like a data scientist, let's pay them because they went to school and study this craft, right? Yeah. And so
you need to pay people for what they're doing the work, right? For the work they're doing.
Cannot put people on fire to keep other folks warm. So that's one of my mantras.
No, I've never heard that, but I'm going to start spreading the word also, because I think so often, and I, for example, am on the same boat as you, right? I feel passionately about this community. I believe that we are invisible. And the reason why I went into media is also to raise our voices and raise awareness, not just in our little cluster, our bubble of the Filipino community, but in the broader audience, mainstream and just the world, right? Just beyond the negative stories about us. It's either we're disasters, the typhoons, victims of typhoon, or like our corrupt government, like we always have negative stories about us, but really, like you said, like your mom, like so many stories like that, that's just part of our fabric. And I think the sad part, I feel like, Ryan, is sometimes we don't like to draw attention to ourselves, right? We don't want to toot our own horn. We don't want to, and I feel like sometimes when I try to draw these stories out from people, they're parang nahiya, So, they don't want to be boastful. So I don't know. How do we get over that kind of that hump, that obstacle when we're trying to talk about ourselves and give ourselves kind of the representation we deserve on a national and global stage?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really something that we think through every single day. And, I also get those type of responses. And then, I go in deeper and I ask them, do you feel seen? No, really, do you feel seen? Right. And so we need to give ourselves first permission to be seen and speak our truth and tell our stories and amplify those stories. Right. And so not just of achievements, but the pain and trauma that we have experienced, because those type of stories are the ones that brings us together, not just as Filipino, but just as people. We need to be seen as a full human being. And so that's what we mean by like invisibility, right? And so what does that look like? For example, let's look at corporations, for example. I think the spaghetti brand was Borelli or something like that. Was it Borelli?
Yeah, I think it's Borrelia.
Yeah, they worked with an agency to engage Filipino Americans in the United States, and was talking about Filipino spaghetti.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
using their pasta. And I'm just like, yes, you see us in our fuller selves and our love for sweet spaghetti.
Is that
You
your
know?
is that your client?
No, that's not. I was just like,
Okay.
I'm glad that someone is doing this, because that's how brands need to think about it, right? You want us to buy your stuff, but you don't acknowledge us as our full selves. Those who
That's
do win.
interesting.
Yeah.
And I have seen, the good thing is we have seen more representation in films, right? So we saw, I just met Mary Rivera, who played Spider-Man's best friend's grandma in the last movie. Did
That
you
is the
watch
most.
this movie? I didn't see it. No Way Home.
Yeah.
Did you see
Totally.
it?
Yeah.
That part where she, speaks Tagalog and
Oh,
there's
the
like,
Lola.
yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. Yes, I love that.
Or did you
Yeah.
speak Tagalog? I can't see. Someone told me that she speaks a Filipino language, but I don't know if it's Tagalog or if she speaks another dialect. Did you
Yeah.
catch it when you saw it? No.
Oh, yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, that is my Lola. So
But that's what
it's
I'm saying. Like that's a mainstream, I guess, just to make that normalized. So but that's a media thing. But I think as far as our influence in other industries like the medical field, I think we tried to do more stories about how, a lot of the nursing staff that pulled through during COVID, obviously, they were they're Filipinos, right?
yeah, for
And I think
sure.
another aspect is a lot of the Filipino workers here have high degrees from the Philippines, but they end up taking lower jobs here just because of I don't know if it's discrimination or if it's disparity or whatever, but
Yeah, infrastructure is not there to meet us where we are, and so that's part of the research, is to understand like, well, if you're looking at nonprofit organizations, for example, do not have um, 501c3 statuses. A lot of our organizations are still mutual aid organizations without legal entities, who have leadership that's been volunteering throughout. We're looking at why the need for development officers to be in the Filipino community to help us close grants. So those are like things that we need to address, especially with this influx of funding, to make sure that we're not invisible in this funding stream, right? And so that's like one aspect. I mean, I could go on and on, right? Like you, about like how we're invisible in all aspects of life. And I think we need to shift that and change that.
well, at least the specific focus that you have, I haven't heard of, funding streams and our nonprofits, and it's such a challenge. You mentioned three. Do you know off the top of your head which three?
Oh, I can't. I want to share the specific three,
Yeah.
but let me hold off. One of which is in Hawaii. So
Oh, I wonder, was it Philcom? No, I'm just gonna guess.
yeah, so it's yeah, we need to hold off, because I think there needs to be a level of care and responsibility when we're talking about funding in our community, right?
Okay.
And so it could be a contentious challenge. And so let me hold off on that.
Interesting. Well, then sorry for the question, but why would it be contentious?
We're talking about money. Where does money go, right?
Uh-huh.
We're looking at Form 990s. We're looking at tax filings, and so we're looking at that. And so that could, all to say is that it's a big responsibility to take a look at these numbers. And you don't want to prematurely share data that's not ready.
Okay. Well, like I said, I'm
Not
looking
to sound
forward.
cryptic, but it's more of, we want to take care when we share our insights.
Okay. Well, and that's what I'm saying. I think that would be so interesting and enlightening to see which companies or nonprofits are really operating at that level and why there's so few. And because I know there are so many nonprofits here in Hawaii, but yeah, to just know that only that small number are operating at the level that can get that type of funding. I mean, no wonder it's so difficult to get, to move the needle, so to speak.
For sure.
But so I guess to end us here, what would be your greatest, I guess, a request, or if you could speak to the universe and kind of just say, what do we need to change things? Like you said, take that leap that we haven't been able to take. What do we need to start thinking of and doing now?
Accessing capital. I mean, think about the entrepreneur so it's not an ask for me, but it's an ask for entrepreneurs and impact or change makers. Give them access to capital, right? Like we need runway and space and time to like explore, learn, optimize what we're doing for the greater good of the Filipino community or immigrant community or communities that we serve. Access to capital. And so, yeah, we need to shift around that and our thinking around that.
And the entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs, what could they be doing? I'm sure to prepare to make their case stronger for capital.
Yeah, I think one is to get a coach and a therapist.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, building up the fortitude to continue moving forward, to say with all the sea of no's that you're going to get, because yeah, at the beginning there's a lot of no's, and then it just gets easier with more yeses. And so, yeah, coach and therapist, because this thing is crazy. So
it's a hard field. It's a hard, I guess, but everyone who goes into entrepreneurship, I think they're built a different way, right? They're from a unique cloth. They're resilient. I don't know. That's just the way I see entrepreneurs. You guys have a mindset that, I don't know, you can take the rejection and build from there. I don't know. That's the perception I have.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. No, I get one of those things is like investors will always ask like, I want to see an entrepreneur with grit. And my response to them was like, my parents immigrated to America, built this life, and we built the life here. That is a story of grit. So this is not a question of resilience or grit. It's more like, give us access to opportunities and the resources to make it happen, so yeah.
Great. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Ryan. It's good to catch up and hear about, the amazing work you continue to do for the community. And again, the point of us doing this for FYLPRO, also our organization, is to elevate our, our alumni and the members that are doing, amazing work. So thank you so much.
And thank you
How can people
for being part of this community, for being part of this tribe, and like pushing forward. It's like, we just got to keep going.
We need to help each other.
That's what it's about.
Yeah. So what's the best way people can contact you, reach out to you, or want to be part of these projects that you mentioned?
Yeah, reach out to me, Ryan at nextdaybetter.com. Seriously. And then at Ryan Letada on Instagram, where you're going to see a lot of photos of my baby. Um,
Perfect. All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks so much. And next week we'll have more FilPro Fridays. Have a good Easter weekend, everybody.
I
Aloha.